And so this is the value in these social networks. They are about connecting, and I encourage you to do so. Next, please. And you ought to be able to laugh at yourself. And I know when you walk out of here, that's what you're going to say. You know, what was that talk all about? Beats me, blah, 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 something about leadership. What's for dinner? Be able to laugh at yourself. Have a sense of humor, because trust me, everyone else is laughing at you. Next, please. And I'm getting to a close here. I ask you to think, and that sounds so simple, but so many of us motor through life without ever really pausing to think about how to solve complex problems. And in the end, that's the joy of the intellectual life, is the ability to take on hard, complicated problems and think your way through them. Anybody know who this is? Admiral Sir Jackie Fisher, Brit, turn of the last century admiral. He faced a growing budget deficit, huge cuts in defense. All his beautiful battleships were underfunded, undermanned. And he said famously, "Now that the money's run out, we must start to think." Now, those are good words for today, because we are all under budget pressure. And I believe that the creative ideas, the best and brightest ideas, so often come from our youngest officers. Now, you're maybe a few years away from that brilliant idea that turns around the Royal Australian Navy, but I assure you, the sooner you are in the habit of thinking and addressing complex problems, using the intellectual capital you build by reading, by writing, the sooner you will find that creative idea that really does change in a positive way something about your service, your nation, and that's vitally important. Next, please. Now let me close with just 2 slides. Let me close with this one, which I call the responsibility of an officer slide. And this is a hard one to make out from the distance, so I'll kind of talk you through what you're seeing here. This is a U.S. Navy ship in 1951. And it's a terrific photograph, pretty classic of that era and really of all naval eras. Captains love to parade the crew in front of the bow of the ship and get a great photograph like that. And a friend of mine gave me this photograph and said, "Jim, look at this great photo." And I kind of looked at it and I thought, that is a great photo. And then I looked very closely at it. You can't really, I apologize, you can't see it too well from the distance. But if you look very closely, you'll see in the front row all of the officers. And in the second row, you'll see the chief petty officers. And if you are close enough, you can see that in that row of chief petty officers, there's 3 missing spots. In other words, there's several chiefs, there's blank spots, and there's the rest of the chiefs. And so you say to yourself as a military person, why on earth would you have 3 blank spots in a military formation? It makes no sense. So I'm looking at this photograph trying to figure that out. And I finally found the 3 missing chief petty officers. And if you look very closely, you would find them all the way at the back of the formation. And the reason they're back there is because they were 3 African American chief petty officers. And so, evidently, my guess is the executive officer had set up the photograph, probably with the 3 African American chief petty officers in their proper place. And then the captain, I'm guessing, but my guess is the captain walked out, 1951, and said, "You 3, go to the back." That's a guess, but I bet I'm right. That's the responsibility of an officer, in my opinion, is to look hard at things, to understand what's wrong, and not allow that to happen. And it's a big, complex responsibility. And to deal with it, in my view, you need to do all the things we've talked about today. But that understanding of moral responsibility, I think, is fundamental to any officer. Next slide, and last slide. No, second to last slide. I've talked a lot today about soft power and intellect and tradecraft and teaching Afghans to work in wood shops. I don't want anybody to leave here today misunderstanding my message, because we are all in the profession of arms. In the end, this is our fundamental job, is combat power. That's who we are and what we do. But, next slide, life is not an on and off switch. And you know this from your own lives. Life is a rheostat. You kind of got to dial it in. And so like that dial implies, sometimes your dial is spun over there to hard power, and you are putting ordnance on target. But there are many, many times, and I would say Afghanistan is one of them, where the simple act of killing is insufficient to deliver security. And thus, it is necessary to spin that dial, to apply some hard power, like your special operations forces are doing, to do some things in the middle, like your PRTs are doing, like your aviators are doing in Afghanistan, flying helicopters, and also to do some things that are on the soft power side, like that corporal I showed you, who is out there teaching Afghans to build things instead of blowing things up. In the end, your life, all of our lives, are these kinds of rheostats that you have to find the dial setting properly. And in these conflicts, as we deliver security in this turbulent 21st century, you've got to spin that dial, in my opinion, between hard power and soft power. You've got to do both. Next slide. Last slide. Wikipedia. I love this thing. I mean, I'm on it 50 times a day, and I'm sure all of you are. But it's an interesting and instructive process. How does Wikipedia exist? It is a process by which every morning millions of people contribute. They're not paid for it. They jump on Wikipedia and they add facts, they add ideas, they add knowledge. And every day, millions of people, without charge, draw from it. It's a wiki, and it's an encyclopedia. It's those two things together, Wikipedia. The vision statement of Wikipedia is extremely instructive. It is a world in which every human being can freely share in the sum of all knowledge. Think about that for a minute. A world in which every human being can freely share in the sum of all knowledge. That's a powerful idea. My closing thought for you tonight, for all of you as you embark on the beautiful trajectories of your lives and your careers, is that you will be part of a wiki. You will be part of contributing ideas and drawing from them, but to the degree you are part of the security of Australia, the security of the world, through organizations like the United Nations and NATO and treaty organizations, you will be part of a wiki that contributes to the sum of all security. That's an important job. It's a vitally important job. We're counting on you.